My grandmother's voice cut through the noise of the restaurant like a blade through silk. I saved $120,000 for your education, Sophia. Every single dollar is in that account. Tell me, sweetheart, how does it feel to be debt-free? I didn't answer. I couldn't, because I was standing there in a dress I'd bought at Goodwill for $7, holding a diploma that cost me $86,000 in student loans, and my grandmother had just told me she'd already paid for everything. I looked at my mother. She was smiling, but it wasn't the warm kind. It was the kind of smile a poker player gives when the river card flips and they know they've lost. My father was adjusting his cufflinks. He does that when he's nervous. He adjusts things. Cufflinks. Watches. The truth. I turned back to my grandmother and said the words that cracked my family in half. Grandma, I never saw that money. Not a single cent. Before I tell you what my mother said when the silence broke, I want to know something. Drop a comment. Where are you listening from right now? I want to see how far this story reaches, because what happened next at that table deserves witnesses. My name is Sophia. I'm 27 years old. I'm a veterinary technician. I work at an animal hospital in Portland, Oregon. I make $38,000 a year. I also bartend Thursday through Saturday at a place downtown that serves $14 cocktails to people who have never had to choose between groceries and a heating bill. I know this because I have had to make that choice. Every single winter for the last 5 years. I also do freelance pet sitting on Sundays because my student loan payment is $742 a month. That's almost a quarter of my take-home pay, every month, for the next 15 years. For a degree my grandmother apparently already paid for. Let me take you back to that dinner. It was June 14th, my graduation dinner. My grandmother, Eleanor, had flown in from Scottsdale. She's 73, retired, used to own a chain of physical therapy clinics across Arizona. She sold them in 2014 for a number she never told anyone, but I knew it was significant because she bought a house in Scottsdale with cash and never blinked. Grandma Eleanor is not flashy. She wears plain linen blouses and drives a 10-year-old Lexus she refuses to replace because the seats are already broken in the way she likes. But she is precise. She keeps records of everything. Birthday cards she sent in 1998. Receipts from my school supplies in second grade. Every wire transfer, every deposit, every penny accounted for. She is the kind of woman who balances her checkbook on the first of every month and considers it a form of meditation. We were at a restaurant called Bellevue, one of those places with cloth napkins and a wine list thicker than my thesis. My parents, Martin and Christine, had chosen it. Of course they had. They always chose the most expensive option in any situation because they believed that proximity to luxury was the same thing as deserving it. My older brother, Ryan, was there too, sitting next to his wife, Kelsey, both of them glowing with the particular confidence that comes from never having been told no. The moment my grandmother asked that question, the table split into two worlds. There was the world where my grandmother believed she had secured my future, and the world where I had spent 5 years drowning. I watched my mother's hand drift to her wine glass. She didn't drink. She just held the stem, rotating it slowly, the way you fidget with a pen when you're calculating your next move. Sophia is being dramatic, my mother said, her voice light, practiced, the tone she uses at charity galas when someone asks an uncomfortable question. Of course, we manage the fund. It's in a high-yield account. She'll access it when she's older, more mature. I'm 27, I said. I have 3 jobs. When exactly do I become mature enough? My mother ignored me. She looked at my grandmother instead. Mom, you know how Sophia is. She's emotional. She's impulsive. If we had handed her that money at 18, she would have blown it on something ridiculous. We were protecting her from herself. My grandmother set her water glass down. She didn't slam it. She placed it with the kind of deliberate care that made my father stop adjusting his cufflinks. Protecting her, Eleanor repeated. By doing what, exactly? By investing it wisely, my father said, jumping in with the confidence of a man who has never been questioned in his own house. We moved it into diversified assets. It's all accounted for. I pulled out my phone. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I opened my camera and hit record. I propped it against the small vase of white roses in the center of the table, angled so it could see everyone. Oregon is a one-party consent state. I was the party. I was consenting. I was also about to upload this to every platform I had. What are you doing? My brother asked, noticing the phone. His voice had that edge of authority he'd inherited from our father, the assumption that asking a question was the same as giving an order. Documenting, I said. Continue. My mother's eyes locked on the phone. She knew what it meant. But Christine has always believed she is the smartest person in any room, and smart people don't panic. They perform. She straightened her posture, smoothed the napkin on her lap, and transformed. Suddenly, she wasn't my mother anymore. She was a CEO giving a shareholder presentation. Fine, she said. Let me explain it properly since Sophia clearly doesn't understand financial planning. When Mom sent the first deposit, Sophia was 17. She wanted to be a poet. She looked at my grandmother with exaggerated patience. A poet, Mom. Can you imagine? Giving $100,000 to a 17-year-old who wanted to write poems? She would have rented a loft in Brooklyn and starved. I wanted to be a poet when I was 17, I said. I became a veterinary technician because I couldn't afford the luxury of following my dreams. Because I was paying for a degree you told me I had to finance myself. And look how strong you are because of it, my father said. He actually smiled when he said it. The same way a coach smiles after making a player run until they vomit. You're resilient, Sophia. You're self-made. If we had coddled you with that money, you'd be soft. I lived in my car for 3 weeks during my sophomore year, I said. My voice was flat, controlled. I had practiced this. Not the words, but the calm. I had spent years learning that if you scream at people like my parents, they dismiss you as hysterical. But if you speak quietly, if you lay the facts out like bricks in a wall, they cannot climb over them. My roommate moved out. I couldn't cover rent alone. I called you. Do you remember what you told me? My father shifted in his chair. That was different. You told me to figure it out. That struggling builds character. I slept in the back seat of a 2009 Civic in November in Oregon. It was 34 degrees. I kept the engine running for heat and nearly died from carbon monoxide because the exhaust had a leak I couldn't afford to fix. You survived, my mother said, as if that was the point. I was hospitalized, I corrected. A campus security guard found me unconscious. I had hypothermia and carbon monoxide poisoning. The ER bill was $4,000. I'm still paying it off. My mother looked at her plate, not because she felt guilty, because she was recalculating. I could see it. She was figuring out how to reframe this as a success story, how to spin sleeping in a car in freezing temperatures as some kind of bootstrap narrative. Meanwhile, I continued, turning to my brother. Ryan moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Seattle the same month. Fully furnished, granite countertops, parking spot included. Who paid for that? Ryan's jaw tightened. That was different. I had an internship. I needed to be near the office. Your internship was unpaid, I said. You had no income. You were 21 years old with a 2-bedroom apartment in one of the most expensive cities in the country. How? Mom and Dad helped a little, he admitted. His wife, Kelsey, was suddenly very interested in her salad. How much is a little? I asked. That's not relevant, my mother snapped. My grandmother leaned forward. I think it's very relevant. The table went quiet. Not the comfortable kind. The kind where you can hear the restaurant's background music. Some soft jazz thing that felt absurd against the weight of what was happening. I pulled up my student loan statement on my phone and slid it across the table to my grandmother. She put on her reading glasses. I watched her eyes move line by line. Principal balance. Interest rate. Monthly payment. Projected payoff date. 2039. Her lips pressed together so tightly they turned white. $86,000, she said. You owe $86,000. Yes, I said, for a degree you already paid for. My grandmother looked at my mother, not at my father, not at Ryan, at Christine, because Eleanor has always known exactly where the decisions in this family are made, and it isn't with the man adjusting his cufflinks. Christine, she said, where is the money? It's invested, my mother repeated, but the performance was cracking. I told you, Mom, we diversified it. Into what? Real estate, bonds, some market positions. It's all very standard. Show me, my grandmother said. I don't have the statements here. My grandmother pulled out her own phone. I'll call my accountant right now. He can access the trust records from the custodial bank. My mother's face did something I had never seen before. It went completely blank, not calm, empty, like someone had pulled the plug on whatever program was running behind her eyes. She rebooted in about 3 seconds. When she came back online, she was a different character entirely. Fine, my mother said. You want the truth? Here's the truth. She set down her wine glass with a sharp click. That money was never going to be enough for Sophia. $120,000? For what? A degree in animal science? You know what a vet tech makes, Mom? $38,000 a year. She looked at me like I was a used car with bad mileage. It was a waste. My grandmother didn't move. But Ryan, my mother continued, and here her voice softened into something that made my skin crawl. It was reverence, pure, undiluted favoritism dripping like honey. Ryan got into the MBA program at Wharton. Do you understand what that means? That's a top 3 school. He had potential. Real, measurable, profitable potential. That money, invested in Ryan's career, has already paid for itself 10 times over. He's a vice president at his firm now. He makes $300,000 a year. That's return on investment, Mom. That's what smart money does. I stared at her. I was watching a woman explain, with complete sincerity, that she had stolen from one child to fund another because she calculated their market value and found one of them wanting. I was the off-brand product. Ryan was the premium listing. And in her mind, this wasn't cruelty. It was efficiency. You used my education fund to pay for Ryan's MBA, I said. We reallocated it, my father said, to where it would generate the most value for the family. I was eating ramen and working doubles at a gas station to afford textbooks, I said. You told me we couldn't afford to help. You looked me in the eye and said the family was stretched thin. That Christmas, you bought Ryan a new car. A pre-owned BMW, Ryan corrected, as if that mattered. I was washing dishes at a diner until 2 a.m, I said, while you drove a BMW to business school on my money. It wasn't your money, my mother said. It was the family's money, and we invested it where it would do the most good. It was in my name, I said. Grandma sent it for me. Every check was written to Sophia Chen, Education Fund. And we redirected it, my mother said. Because that's what parents do. We make the hard calls. We prioritize. She looked at my grandmother. And frankly, Mom, you should be thanking us. Ryan's success reflects on the entire family. Sophia's little animal job does not. My little animal job, I repeated. Last month, I performed emergency surgery on a dog that had swallowed a sock. The week before that, I held a woman's hand while her 14-year-old cat died in her arms. 2 months ago, I talked a teenager out of the worst mistake of his life because he came in crying about his pet and ended up telling me things he hadn't told anyone. That's my little animal job. That's very noble, my mother said, in the tone people use when they mean irrelevant. I glanced at my phone. The recording had been running for 12 minutes. I'd started posting to my story, my feed, everywhere. The view count on the stream was climbing. 400, 700, 1,000. The comments were already a river. My grandmother stood up. She didn't say a word. She simply stood, and the gesture carried the weight of 73 years of earned authority. She reached into the bag she'd brought, the brown leather tote she takes everywhere, the one my grandfather gave her before he died. She pulled out a folder. Not a new folder, an old one, the kind with a brass clasp and a label written in ballpoint pen. She set it on the table. I knew about Ryan's apartment, she said. I've known for 2 years. The table stopped breathing. When Sophia called me last Thanksgiving, my grandmother continued, her voice steady as a metronome. She told me she was working 3 jobs to pay off loans for a degree I had funded. I didn't say anything to her. I didn't want to accuse anyone until I had proof. So I hired someone. She opened the folder. A forensic auditor, the best one in Arizona. He spent 6 weeks tracing every dollar from the custodial account I established in 2017. She slid a document across the table. It was a flowchart, color-coded, with arrows connecting bank accounts like a nervous system. Here is my original deposit, she said, pointing. $120,000, contributed over 4 years, deposited into a custodial account at First Western Bank. And here, she traced an arrow, is where it went. Every month, between $5,000 and $10,000 was transferred to a personal checking account belonging to Christine and Martin Chen. Grandma pulled out a second page, a ledger. I'll read just a few, she said. September 2019. Tuition deposit, Wharton School of Business, $22,000. March 2020. Down payment on a leased BMW 3 Series, $8,000. June 2020. First and last month's rent plus security deposit. Downtown Seattle apartment, $7,200. December 2020. Holiday trip to Aspen, 4 adults, $11,000. August 2021. Engagement ring, $5,800. She looked up from the paper and stared directly at my brother's wife. That's a lovely ring, Kelsey. Kelsey's hand disappeared under the table. My mother opened her mouth. Mom, this is a misunderstanding. We were going to pay it back. It was a loan. A loan, my grandmother repeated, from a custodial account designated for a minor's education. A loan you never disclosed, never documented, and never repaid. We had every intention, my father started. You had every intention of never getting caught, my grandmother said. Her voice didn't rise. That was the terrifying part. She didn't yell. She narrated, like she was reading a verdict. She pulled out one more document. This one had a blue backing. Legal paper. This is a civil complaint, she said. Filed this morning with Multnomah County Circuit Court. Breach of fiduciary duty, conversion of custodial assets, and fraud. She looked at both my parents. You are both named as defendants. My father lunged for the paper. You can't do this, Eleanor. We're family. My grandmother pulled the document back with a calm that made the air feel cold. You stopped being family the day you let your daughter sleep in a car while you paid for your son's ski trip. My mother turned to me. Her mask was fully off now. Sophia, call her off. Tell her to drop this. You're going to destroy the family over money? I'm not destroying anything, I said. You built a house on my back and called it an investment. I'm just turning on the lights. My brother stood up. His chair scraped the floor. This is insane. I didn't know where the money came from. I had nothing to do with this. My grandmother turned a page in the folder. Here is an email from your mother, dated the 12th of August, 2019. She read from it. Ryan, we're using Sophia's education fund for Wharton. Don't mention it to her or your grandmother. It's a family decision. Your response was, and she turned the page, thanks, Mom. Makes sense. She's not going to do anything important with it anyway. Ryan sat down. The restaurant had gone quiet around us. Not just our table. The tables nearby had stopped pretending not to listen. A waiter stood frozen near the kitchen door, holding a tray of desserts, watching like he was seeing a car accident unfold in slow motion. My grandmother closed the folder. She looked at me. Sophia, my accountant has already begun the process of recovering what's possible. The court filing will freeze their joint accounts by Monday. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. She slid it across the table. In the meantime, this is a cashier's check. I cannot undo 5 years of suffering, but I can make sure you don't spend one more night paying for someone else's life. I opened the envelope. The check was for $90,000. I didn't cry. I wanted to. But I had spent so many years not crying in front of these people that my eyes had forgotten how to do it in their presence. My mother finally broke. She didn't break with tears. She broke with fury. You think you can just waltz in here and play hero? She hissed at my grandmother. You weren't here, Mom. You don't know what it was like raising 2 kids. We had to make choices. Hard choices. Sophie didn't need that money as much as Ryan did. Ryan had ambition. He had drive. He was going places. Sophia was going to pet dogs for a living. I save lives for a living, I said. But I know that doesn't count in your spreadsheet. My father made one last move. The desperate kind. The Hail Mary of a man watching his carefully constructed facade crumble in real time. He leaned across the table and pointed at me. If you go through with this, I'll tell everyone you were an unstable kid. I'll tell them about the time you had a breakdown in college. I'll make sure no one ever hires you again. My grandmother picked up my phone. She held it up so my father could see the screen. 14,000 people, she said. 14,000 people just watched you threaten your daughter with blackmail. She turned the phone so the camera caught his face perfectly. Would you like to say that again for the ones who just joined? My father looked at the phone. The color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug at the bottom of his jaw. My grandmother set the phone down. She turned to the rest of the table. I built my clinics from nothing. I worked 60-hour weeks for 30 years. I saved that money for Sophia because I wanted her to have a choice, any choice, about her own life. You took that from her. Not because you needed it, because you decided she didn't deserve it. She looked at Ryan. I loved you, Ryan. I still do. But you knew. You knew where the money came from. And you took it anyway. That ring on Kelsey's finger, that apartment, that degree, it's all built on your sister's hunger. She looked at my mother last. And Christine? You are my daughter. But you are also a thief. And I will not protect thieves. Not even the ones I raised. My grandmother picked up her purse. She left $200 bills on the table for the meal. Then she turned to me. Sophia, let's go. I stood up. I tucked the envelope into my bag. I picked up my phone, still streaming, still watched by thousands of strangers who had become witnesses. My mother was staring at the tablecloth. My father was trying to call someone, his fingers missing the numbers on his phone. Ryan was whispering furiously to Kelsey, who was already pulling off her engagement ring like it was burning her skin. The waiter with the dessert tray had turned around and walked back into the kitchen. I walked out of that restaurant next to my grandmother. She didn't put her arm around me. She didn't tell me it was going to be okay. She just walked beside me, steady and upright, at 73 years old, and matched my pace, step for step. We sat in her rental car in the parking lot. She started the engine, but didn't drive. We just sat there for a minute. The dashboard clock glowed green. It was 9:47 p.m. You should have told me sooner, she said. Not with anger, just with the particular sadness of someone who could have helped and wasn't given the chance. I didn't want to believe it, I said. I kept thinking maybe they really did invest it. Maybe one day they'd surprise me with a check and say it was all a plan. My grandmother put the car in drive. She looked straight ahead. The people who steal from you will always tell you it was for your own good, she said. Remember that. She drove me back to my apartment, the one with the leak in the ceiling and the window that doesn't close all the way. She walked me to the door. She looked at the hallway with its peeling paint and the smell of mildew that I had stopped noticing years ago. She didn't say anything about it. She just hugged me. It was the first time anyone had hugged me in a very long time. 3 weeks later, the court froze my parents' accounts. The forensic audit revealed that of the $120,000 my grandmother had saved, $114,000 had been spent on Ryan's education, on vacations, on a kitchen remodel that I was never invited to see, on a life that was supposed to be mine. 6 weeks after that, I paid off my student loans, all of them. I held the zero balance statement in my hands and stared at it for a long time. I had spent 5 years believing that I was simply unlucky. That life was hard and I wasn't built for easy. That some people get BMWs and some people get bus passes, and that's just how the math works. But it wasn't math. It was theft. And the people who stole from me sat across from me at Thanksgiving and told me to be grateful. My brother called me once, a month after the dinner. He said he wanted to explain. I asked him one question. Did you know? He was quiet for 11 seconds. I counted. Then he said, I didn't think it was that much. I haven't spoken to him since. My mother sent me a letter. Handwritten, which she knew I would recognize as a manipulation tactic because she hasn't handwritten anything since 2015. In it, she said she forgave me for embarrassing the family. She said she hoped I would come to my senses. She signed it, "With love, Mom." I used it as a bookmark for 3 days, then I recycled it. My father hasn't contacted me at all. I hear through a cousin that he's consulting a lawyer about the civil suit. I hope he finds a good one. He'll need it. As for me, I still work at the animal hospital. I still bartend on weekends. Not because I have to anymore, but because I like the people. I moved into a new apartment last month. It has a window that closes and a ceiling that doesn't rain on me. I adopted a cat from the shelter at work. She's missing one ear and has a crooked tail, and she purrs like a diesel engine when I come home. I named her Eleanor. People say family is everything. That blood is thicker than water, that you should forgive because life is short and grudges are heavy. But here's what no one tells you. Some families are not a safety net. They are a trap. They wrap themselves around you with the language of love while they pick your pockets clean. They tell you sacrifice is what families do while they sacrifice you. And when you finally see it, when the numbers don't lie and the silence breaks, you realize the bravest thing you can ever do is not forgive. It's to walk away. It's to close the door. It's to sit in a car with someone who actually loves you and let the engine run and the clock glow green and the night be quiet for once. That's what I did. And for the first time in 5 years, I slept through the night. If this story reached you, if it found you in whatever city, whatever country, whatever room you're sitting in right now, and if it felt familiar, if you recognize the math, the excuses, the smile that isn't warm, then I want you to know something. You are not a bad investment. You never were. The people who told you that are the ones who are bankrupt. Like and subscribe if you want to see what happened when my mother showed up at my new apartment. That story is worse. And it's next.